Churches invest significant time preparing for emergencies and crises. Far fewer know how to shepherd people after the immediate danger has
Mhm.
passed. I want to welcome you to the Faith Secure podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Today's guest has devoted her ministry to helping people make sense of their stories and experience healing through Christ. Vicki Deemert is the founder of The Healing Narrative, a trauma-informed coach, a biblical counselor, church
Mhm.
conflict mediator, and a reconciliation facilitator. She works with individuals, couples, pastors, ministry leaders, churches, and faith based organizations, helping them navigate trauma, leadership challenges, church conflict, emotional healing, and spiritual formation. Today, we're discussing something every church hope it never faces, but every church should be prepared for. And that's how do we help a congregation heal after a crisis? Welcome to the podcast. How you
Thank
doing,
you.
Vicki?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Dr.
It
Mike.
is so good to have you. All right, are you ready to dive right in?
I am. I am. Let's do
Okay,
it.
let's get started. And I'm going to start right here with your heart for this ministry. I'm intrigued. So, Vicki,
Yeah.
one statement I read on your profile that immediately stood out to me. Most people don't need more information. They need someone who can help them make sense of their story. Why has helping people understand their story become such an important part of your ministry?
Because once I started to understand my own story, it changed everything. It changed how I engage my husband, my kids, and even the way I talk about story or when people hear story. I think I want to just spend a minute and explain the way I'm talking about it because we can talk about story as like a timeline of events. I grew up in Michigan. I'm youngest of six kids. Went to
Mhm.
this school, like all true stories. Um, but when we get into the particularities and the specifics of
Mhm.
how an event impacted me, how did I start making meaning of it? Where
Okay.
did something come against my goodness or my glory? What did I do with rupture? What did my body learn? So the more we go
Hmm.
from generalities to specifics, the more
Okay.
healing, the more we're going to need Jesus. And so yeah, the more we understand his suffering, and so often we just want to bypass it. And so, yeah, moving from a timeline and generalities into specifics,
Mhm.
into the wound, into the
Okay.
meaning making.
Okay. Okay. That's very insightful. I want to move like beyond and go beyond the incident a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay. As I said earlier, churches often spend considerable time preparing for emergencies and
yeah.
far fewer prepare for what happens after the crisis. So why do you believe recovery and healing deserve just as much attention?
Yeah, usually the incident is pretty quick, right? Maybe
Right.
it's a few seconds or maybe it's 10 minutes.
Right.
Um but the impact remains. So like if I'm in a car accident, the car accident may only actually be
Right.
10, 15, 30 seconds, but the impact and the healing
Absolutely.
is way longer. And so how do I make sense of it? And given my history of yeah, what was my role growing up? What did I do with my pain? Did I have to stay
Mm.
silent? Was were my emotions welcomed? Right. I'm always going to be going back to story of family of origin and what I learned. So even something like a car accident is gonna how I respond to that is gonna reveal something. But yeah, like now what do I do with I'm afraid to drive or I don't want to go
Mm.
past that
Right.
street or right, like that's where the recovery is, and I can't work through that by myself. I need help. And so if we're not aware of like, oh, what do we do after in the recovery, where people are going to be left alone, and
Yeah.
oftentimes in our loneliness we're also making sense of God. And
Oh, okay.
does God care about my pain?
Mm.
Does he, will he intervene? You know, and so if I experience abandonment, and I'm not even talking about big T trauma like major abuse in family, but let's just say parents were not emotionally present, and I'm doing something with God in that. Like, oh yeah, this is
Right.
God abandoned me again, right?
Yeah.
He's not, he doesn't care. Or if I had to buck it up and be like, I can do this myself,
Mhm.
then I don't need God, right? So there's just,
Ah, yes.
what are
Yes.
people
Yes.
doing? Everybody's going to be doing something different.
Wow, that's true. That's true. So now I'm gonna tell you, Vicki, in my podcast, a big theme is leadership that I talk
Yes.
about. Okay.
Yes.
So I want to talk about an example of, say, the first week. Like, imagine a church experiences a traumatic event this Sunday, right? What should a pastor's leadership look like during that first week in the aftermath?
I would say presence. And what is our theology of suffering? It's weep with those who weep. And so often, sometimes we'll be like, let's make sense of it, or let me
Mhm.
tell you something about God, or we'll go to like the left brain where we make sense but this was a right brain experiential thing that happened.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so often we'll kind of do we'll try to make a right brain experience with the left brain, the cognition or the academics or the theology, when
Mhm.
I think about in scripture, I think it's in Jeremiah, the weeping women, and it
Okay.
says, women, teach your daughters to weep and wail. And there's
Ah,
something about like somebody's weeping with me, and my pain, again, my pain matters. um you
right.
think about Job, his friends sat with him for like the first 7 days, right? Like there was
Right.
presence. And so like presence matters. And I don't have to try to make sense of something for you. And I would
Mm.
say the other thing is, so often maybe leaders are tempted to do the talking to make sense, to kind of bring
Right.
comfort
Right.
to that, and let people talk, let them
Ah,
process, let them bring their, like if a crisis happens and there's like a shooting or something, now I have to sit and like listen. Like I need to do something. I need to process it. I need to talk. I need somebody to cry with me.
mhm.
And normalizing lament and mourning, and normalizing that everybody's going to process differently.
That's
You're
right.
going to have
That's
people
right.
who are angry. You're going to people who are going to not look at it. You're going to have people who are right. And so normalize that however you're responding is welcome.
Wow. And then I like the part where you said about just being present sometimes is all that's required. Some people
Yeah.
feel the need that they have to say something,
Yes.
and that's not
Yes.
always the case.
No.
Because
No.
more often than not, you'll say the wrong thing.
Yeah, that's right. And I want to like share a little example from my story. Like story, I think became really important because there was a season in my life where I struggled with generalized panic disorder. Like I
Okay.
couldn't leave the house. I was having panic attacks. And so many friends and well-meaning believers would give me scripture. But like I actually couldn't read a line because my brain was like, I was in so much. So
Right.
it felt like I was failing at faith. And then at
Oh,
one point
wow.
it just got really, really hard. And we were trying to decide, oh, do I need, should I be going to the hospital? I was off and on the phone with my doctor all day. And everybody in our small group, I think at that point had reached the point where we're like, we don't know what to do. And they all showed up at my house and I'm just a mess. And everybody that showed up, the first thing they said to me was, Vicki, we love you. Vicki, we
Wow.
love you. And
Wow.
that changed me because I was like,
Yes.
oh, I can be a mess. Like the thing I needed was
Yes.
presence and people
Yes.
to be like, you belong. This doesn't affect your belong. We love you. We are here.
Oh,
And
that's beautiful.
so it's the embodied gospel, right? It's the
Yes.
embodiment. It's that we're
Yes.
actually going to not just talk about it, we're going to do it.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's well said. Now, as we know too, Vicki, trauma doesn't affect only individuals. We know it affects entire communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does trauma impact a congregation And what should church leaders understand about that process?
Yeah, it's individual, but it's also collective. Because now here's
Mm,
a shared experience, and so as the community, they've all experienced something, and
mhm.
so there's a commonality that we're going to connect around the thing that we have experienced.
Okay.
But that doesn't remove the individual. So kind of like what we said earlier, that there's this collective experience, but um, everybody's going to have their own, be putting their own meaning to it, trying to make their
Yeah,
own
right,
sense,
right.
even based on
Absolutely.
like what were my survival strategies growing up. That's going to come into play.
Okay.
And if I'm not allowed to, if I was never allowed to grieve, and now you're grieving, and I don't think I can grieve. It's not conscious. It's just
Right,
my
right.
story playing out. And so you have the collective working through with individuals, processing, experiencing it differently. And so, um, yeah, I think it changes the congregation because it can become like now it's a marker in that congregation's history.
Right,
Um,
right.
and, you know, like, oh, now we have this thing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happened that we're all processing through.
Okay, okay. Now, on that vein, I want to turn the focus a little bit towards the pastors,
Yeah.
okay? Because they have to shepherd while they're hurting, because sometimes we forget that pastors are human too, you know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
now, because pastors and ministry leaders are often expected to comfort everyone else while they carry their own grief, how
Yeah.
can leaders care for themselves while faithfully caring for others?
I I love this question. And so a lot of my training comes from the Allender Center. Dan Allender is narrative focused trauma care. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that they say a lot there is that you can't take somebody further than you've gone yourself. So
Mm,
if a pastor or a leader has not done their own personal work, like they may be a super gifted speaker and know
right,
theology,
right, right,
but if they
right.
don't know themselves, that's going to leak out. And so their
Mm,
story now is also coming into play. And they have to, at minimum, be aware of that. Again, if they grew up not being able to weep,
mm,
or their theology of emotions is they're bad, you can't have them equal, right? Like that's going to somehow leak out. Um, and so oftentimes they believe that they need to be the one that's leading. And this actually might be a moment to model I I also need care, and we live like the kingdom is big. And so
it
maybe
is.
thinking outside the box and being like, I'm going to pull in somebody else that isn't as affected right now.
Mhm.
That they weren't in like in the room, or it's an expert or another pastor from a neighboring sister congregation or
Okay,
something. Like,
okay.
let's utilize the resources and the relationships we have, and to be like, you know what, actually maybe I don't have to be the one in this moment because I need care.
Mm,
And I worked at a biblical counseling agency years ago. One
okay.
of the founding people of it committed suicide.
Oh,
And what do you do with a founder of a biblical counseling agency that commits suicide? So it
wow.
was like an A bomb went off, and I was like,
Absolutely.
I was closest to it. So like the expectation for me to lead counselees through this, and when I'm actually in the hospital, like this was my friend, this was my, like, we
Right.
worked daily, right? So in that moment, if I feel like, gosh, I have to like lead everybody through, I'm so curious about that. Like, why
Wow.
abandon yourself? Again, the kingdom is so big.
Mm,
So to take time off and be like, I actually can't counsel because I'm in the hospital bed,
mhm.
and
Okay.
I actually need somebody to care for me. And that models health. Like, am I
Mm,
even aware of times when I need to receive help and care? And why am
mhm.
I not willing, or willing, like whatever it is, to utilize the resources God has given? And the other thing I want to say about this is, this might be a little my
No,
hot
by
take.
all means, Vicky, go ahead. Go ahead. It's you got the
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah, pastors' giftings are often theology and teaching. And you have a body of believers that maybe you have somebody in your congregation that's like intercessory prayer, right? Or
Mhm.
like utilize. And so their gifting might not be actually to lead through this moment. And that's
That's
the
true.
self-awareness. Like
That's a great point.
their gifting might be like, you know what, we have so and so here that I want to bring them up, and they actually really know how to lament, and I want
Mhm.
them to be the one to lead us through mourning and or through this intercessory prayer or whatever it is. Like that actually is what maybe good leading looks like, and modeling
Yes.
and
Yes.
normalizing. I'm going to receive care. Receiving care is like normal. That I
Mhm.
would say is um, yeah, to pastors who or shepherds or clergy who are hurting themselves.
Wow. That that was good, Vicky. That was good. That I have so many other questions, but I know we're limited on time. So I'm gonna press forward on this,
Right.
but I just want to talk about some common mistakes. Okay, and what are some of the most common mistakes that churches unintentionally, of course, make
Yeah.
after a tragedy, and what should they do instead?
Yeah. I think explaining before listening,
Mm,
and maybe this is the time where the tables turn, or sometimes being like, um, for good or bad, we have churches that we go in and it's the structured, it's we open with a song, and they have their structured Sunday liturgy of what it
right,
looks like, and
right.
the freedom to depart from that, the flexibility to depart from that, and say, you know what, today we're going to maybe spend the whole time singing songs of lament, right? So
Okay.
like I would say have the flexibility to change based on what the need
Mm,
is. And so one time I think explaining or talking or doing a sermon on why does God let bad things happen like the next week, like
right, right.
there's a time and a place for that. Like we need that and people are going to need that, but
Yeah,
sometimes we ignore the experiential. Like people's nervous systems are like, am I safe? Like,
yeah, that's true.
right? They're
That's
like, I
true.
don't even know if I want to go into the church because um, what if it
Right,
happens again? How do I
right.
know that there's not going to be
Absolutely.
another shooter? Like, and you to be able to name the evil. Like, I listened to I think it was the first one you did where you talked about the man that went into the prayer meeting,
Yes.
and to name intentionally how wicked and evil, and like, what do you do with the intention? Because he
Yes.
sat through the
Yes.
prayer meeting, like,
Mhm.
and he knew what he was going to do. So you
Yeah.
have the death of people that you're having to grieve and process, but now you also have this element of like
Yeah.
intentionality and
Yeah.
wickedness and evil that was experienced. And now
Yes.
like people are like, can I even trust people? Like we
Yeah.
trusted him. We came in, we gave him, and he was against us.
That's
Um,
valid. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the next mistake would be confusing forgiveness with healing, or trying to move people to forgiveness too quickly. Because yes, we
Okay.
do want to move to forgiveness. The analogy I use here is if we were in a car accident and there was a drunk driver and we're at the scene, and now somebody comes up and they're like, Vicky, you need to forgive him. But I'm like, I can't feel my legs. Am I bleeding out? Like,
Okay.
right?
Right.
Right? Like maybe we need to tend to the wounds, and like we'll get there. That's on the trajectory. But sometimes we bypass the wound and we try to move people too fast, and we confuse forgiveness with healing.
Mm.
Um, and yeah,
Wow.
I think those are some of the common mistakes. Or we'll bypass and go to be like, again, well-hearted, but we'll quickly be like, God is sovereign, he's in control. But we
Yeah.
just bypass the pain. Like people, maybe they are questioning his sovereignty, but maybe they're not, right? And so
Yeah, we
not
have
doing
to
the spiritual
right.
bypassing.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, we have to be mindful that sometimes it's real simple. These things take time.
Yes.
We have
Mm-hmm.
to be mindful of that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about an important part of the community that gets impacted, and that's the children.
Yeah.
Because the children, of course, they process trauma differently than
Yes.
adults do. So how can churches come alongside children, parents, and families during difficult seasons?
Yeah, I would say I want to start with the kids because,
So
man,
by all means.
the little ones, right? I would say kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. And sometimes we try to, rightfully so, protect them from suffering. And so we don't tell them the hard things. But
Right.
but then at the same time, we're not giving them the tools or the words that they know that they need in life to process hard things. And so maybe, we don't want to give them maybe too much information, but if they're asking a question, giving them the information and asking them the questions like, how are you thinking about that? Like how are you making sense? And so again, the explaining too fast versus like drawing them out.
Right.
And maybe we're telling them something and they're way over here, or they actually have a really profound insight. And so I think being like, yeah, maybe they are resilient, and I want them to have tools to process pain and grief and be like, your big emotions are welcome here. And so if we can't do that, that's going to impact, again, what they're doing with God. Like, this, and what implicitly might be taught is, this isn't a place where I can bring my perspective or my thoughts, or, it's not explicitly said. But I think parents, I'm going to, again, go back to a story. If parents have know their story and they have a bigger capacity and they have tools to regulate, that is going to be so helpful.
That's
for
true.
kids.
Yes,
And so
absolutely.
Letting people be where they are, giving them the words, letting them be angry. I mean, in so many faith communities, we think it has to look so neat, but man, you read some of the Psalms and you're like, Psalm 109, it's like, may they're, he's mad, right?
Okay.
Fatherless, and so there's this permission to lament and go to God honestly. And so many times we just feel like we have to do it so nicely and neatly and the right words.
Right. I mean, yeah, God can take it. He's a big God. He can take
totally.
it.
And I want to say also being honest, like telling the honest, true, or more specific story. When you look at scripture, man, they don't sugarcoat things.
No.
I mean, you have people, I mean, those stories are pretty explicit sometimes, and
yes,
so the biblical authors aren't sugarcoating things. They're naming things as they are. They don't feel like that they have to protect the character. They don't have to protect King David, right?
Okay, that's true. Now, I want to touch on something, Vicki. You actually talked about it earlier, but I just wanted to touch on it again quickly about when to ask for help. Now, how can church leaders recognize when it's time to bring in outside counseling, trauma specialists, or other professional resources, or bring in Vicki? How can they recognize when it's time to do that? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're wondering, like if that's a question, just do it. Like, let's just normalize asking help. If you're like, I don't know, should we get help? Like, what is the harm of saying, you know what, let's call this person or this resource to come in and maybe it's not even for the whole congregation, it's just for the leaders, right? Like, can you help us? So one, if that question is even there. Two, I think having self-awareness and being like, you know what, I'm actually not trained in this. I don't want to go outside of my competency because I actually can do harm. So for example, I am not trained in substance abuse. So if somebody came and wanted my help with substance abuse, I would not be loving them well by doing something I'm not trained in. Like, I don't have a specialty. And so I would, I have my referral list and be like, I really think this person who they have training in it. So, and I would normalize asking for help. Right. And I would say, like, know who's in your congregation and what their giftings and specialties are.
That's
right.
True.
You don't even have to go outside. You could be like, we have, so-and-so that that, you know, they have this in their history, or they're trained in this. Let's have a conversation with them.
Right,
Let
right.
people with their giftings, their God-given giftings, be made available to the church and to the kingdom.
That makes so much sense, Vicki. You're nailing it. You're nailing it. Now, that question you just answered, that was a reiteration. And certain points I like to hammer home. So we're going to touch on something else again about surviving to healing. And how do we know when the church has moved from simply surviving a crisis to genuine healing? And you talked about it earlier, but I just wanted a little more emphasis on it.
Yeah, I think how we understand healing is really important, because healing isn't necessarily the absence of pain. And sometimes I think we think it is. So, if I have a surgery, like the doctors will actually say it's going to hurt for X amount of days. The healing in and of itself is evidence of the body's doing what it needs to do. And that is healing. So sometimes I think what we think healing looks like, it actually doesn't. Being able to tell the truer story and go in more specifics, increasing the capacity to be in grief. I think Jesus is a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And if we're becoming more and more like Jesus, we're going to become people that become more and more familiar with grief. And the wisdom literature in Ecclesiastes says it's better to be in a house of mourning than in a house of laughter. It's not more fun. Like, I want to get out of the house of mourning. And usually, I'm not like, let's go to the house of laughter. And we call that faith when actually being in the house of mourning, something is going to happen there. We're going to meet God and Jesus in ways that we're not going to in the house of laughter.
That's true. Right. So absolutely.
We want to get out of it so fast. And, he's like, where do you want me to put the new couch? Like, oh, no, I'm not staying here. Or, I think about, I don't need new furniture. I'm just passing through really quickly, Or I think about like, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and you're going to prepare a table before me and my enemies. I'm like, can I DoorDash the meal? Like, I actually don't want to have the table set up, right? I just want to go over it. So healing is like, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he is with me. And he will comfort me. And our ability to kind of stay there more. And sometimes you just have to talk about things until you're done talking about them. The other thing I would say is I think we get afraid that we're going to get stuck there. Like, we're going to just cry and never stop crying. And so we don't go there at all. And it's going to feel like a dam opening, but the water will even out, but we don't even give ourselves the opportunity. And so it gets stuck in there, but it doesn't go away. So I think those are some of the things.
Yeah, that's true.
We become people who lament and mourn.
Okay. So now I'm going to add a little practicality here, Vicki. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some preparation before the crisis. Okay. What can churches begin doing today that will make healing and recovery healthier if they ever experience a traumatic event in the future?
Yeah. I would say normalize lament is a regular part of church life, and not just a crisis response. Like, we are a church that mourns and laments, and practice presence, and practice curiosity. I think just because we say we're curious, it doesn't actually mean we are. Sometimes our curiosity is we ask a question, but we couch a solution in the question. So it's actually not, is to be like, have you tried, trusting God? Have you tried?
How about praying? That? Yeah.
Right, where that's not really, it's not really helpful. So normalizing lament. Healthy cultures and churches don't just appear during a crisis. And so the crisis is going to reveal both the health and the unhealth, or the cracks. Like, you're going to be like, oh, we actually weren't prepared for this. I would say this one is really, I think, important for leaders. Again, I'm going back to like leaders doing their own work. Do you have healthy
Right.
leaders who they can be super gifted at preaching? And so
Yeah.
often we assume gifted preachers as emotionally and spiritually mature, but that might not always be the case. And so has the leader done self-work, gone back to family of origin? Have they, are they trauma trained? Or do they have a team that's trauma? Like there's so many agencies that can come in and do a trauma training, but not just be trauma trained, do the work yourself, which is hard work. I would also say in preparing for leaders, are they able to receive, this is just the health of the leaders. Are they able to receive feedback? Are they, right? Like, how do people engage with them? And not to be in an echo chamber, but to have a variety of voices, right? Men, women, different ethnicities, married, not married, different ages, right? Because once you get into this, you're not going to see the blind spots.
That's true. That's true.
And all of these things that may seem a little bit separate but it all matters in a crisis.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I got a bonus question for you, Ms.
All right.
Okay. So now, church security and healing at Faith Secure, we often say security isn't the goal, ministry is. Yeah. So how does emotional and spiritual healing become part of that ministry after a crisis?
Yeah, I would say that the physical security protects the room and the space, and it gives dignity because it's saying your life matters and it's worthy of setting extra protection in to protect. We live in a fallen world where there's evil, and right, so it's worthy of putting the protection and security in place. Emotional spiritual care protects the relationships and offers care to the soul and to the person, and it's saying like your experience and your pain matters. And so we need both. We need both are part of the same stewardship, and one without the other can leave people exposed.
That's
and so
true.
we right. And so
yes. So, and you touched on this earlier to this concept, which is so important in these traumatic situations, and we're going to talk about forgiveness.
Yeah.
Now, we know it's an important biblical principle, but how should pastors approach forgiveness after trauma, and what are some of the common misunderstandings surrounding it?
Yes. So slow to bring up the forgiveness conversation. It is crucial. We have to get there. Yes. That will be a sign of healing, but we don't start there. And so forgiveness asks, like, what will I do with the debt? And so there's it releases personal vengeance into God's hands. Healing asks, what will I do with the wound? And it's going to honestly tend to the wound that remains, right? And so if I get slashed by a knife, I'm going to have to do something with the offender, and there's going to somehow, but so often we'll confuse forgiveness and be like, not tend to the, now guess what? I'm the one that has to go to the doctor. I'm the one that's responsible for wound care, not them. And so often we want them. The other thing I'm going to say is, I think that goes along with this is justice. And we have a God of justice, and sometimes on the side of the kingdom, we're not going to experience justice in the way that we want to, and that's really hard. I was talking to a friend, and his story is one of parents being murdered, and when I was talking to him, he said this phrase that has stuck with me, and just tears in his eyes, and he was like, the agony of forgiveness. And it felt like I was looking into the eyes of Jesus, because we talk about forgiveness so flippantly, and we demand it. We, say you have to do it, but the agony and the cost. And when we look at Jesus, we think about him on the cross with the crown,
Right,
nails.
right.
We're looking at the cost,
Yes.
and the cost affects us. And so often we bypass what it costs us to forgive.
Yes. Yes.
And so sometimes having that named actually helps us to forgive and to be like, this is what it cost me.
Wow.
Sleepless nights, loss of trust in whatever, like just naming the cost. Because it's the cost that really, if Jesus didn't die on the cross and we're like, somehow like you're forgiven, we would just probably do it. It wouldn't matter to us as much.
Right. That's a good point.
But because we see the cost, we're like,
yes,
I don't deserve it and I'm not entitled to it.
Yes.
And thank you. Right. And so it's a longer process, and to give people that space to be like, it's going to cost the agony of forgiveness.
Wow. Man. Yeah. So Vicki, after that, we got to give them some hope. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, where does genuine hope come from after the unthinkable has happened?
Yeah. I'm going to say sometimes we think hope equals the absence of pain, and it's not the absence of pain. And so it's Christ's presence inside the pain, which is a very different promise than this will just stop hurting soon. And like in the story I shared before, when people were trying to like give me Bible passages, hope actually came in their presence.
That's right. Right.
And something changed when they came and embodied Christ's love, where they looked at me and they were like, we love you. Right. So your pain matters. There's hope there. And that actually gives me the freedom and the capacity to move towards forgiveness, that there will be healing and time. So hope grows out of being truly seen in the worst of it, but not being talked out of feeling it.
All right. Wow.
Vicki, I think about Jesus. He moves toward, in Matthew, he's just moving. After he teaches, the Beatitudes, you just see him moving towards pain, touching, right? Restoring people to community and.
Right. Wow. Vicki, you dropping nuggets all over the place, man. I love it. I love it. Now, before we get you out of here, Vicki, we have what we call the Faith Secure Lightning Round.
All right, let's do it.
So, no, I'm going to give you a word, and all I need is a word that comes to your mind or a short answer response. Okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Healing.
The capacity to stay connected to God, yourself, and others in the midst of pain.
Hope. You just spoke of it.
Yeah, Christ's presence in the midst of pain.
Grace.
Grace lets us tell the truth honestly, but without being destroyed by it.
Okay. Resilience.
The capacity to grieve, and stay connected. It's not just we bounce back and we move on.
Right.
I can say in this.
Okay. And you just was speaking of this one, forgiveness.
Yeah. What do I do with the debt?
That's right.
What am I going to do with can I name the debt and what it cost me?
Okay. Community.
I'm like the cloud of witnesses. So okay, I'm going to say a little bit more on this, that we think healing can, as soon as we think healing comes individually, like I'm going to go by myself and process. No, we need the body of believers. We need the cloud of witnesses. We need people to see our pain, and for us to bear witness to each other. Comfort those with the comfort you've been given. But if I'm alone, I'm not going to get comfort. So we need community.
Yes. Okay. Restoration.
Rebuilding trust and connection. Forgiveness is a part of that, but forgiveness doesn't equal that everything is restored. Right. But it's the process of rebuilding trust and connection.
Okay. And the last one, faith.
Going to God and saying, I need help. I'm going to bring my pain to God. I trust that you are going to help me. I think about the people that Jesus names. What great faith. There's a woman on her knees weeping before him. And he's like, what great faith.
That's right. That's right. Vicki, thank you for reminding us that while churches prepare for emergencies, they must also prepare to walk faithfully with people afterward. Your insight has shown us that healing is simply not about recovering from the crisis. It's about helping people encounter Christ's hope, restoration, and grace in the midst of the most difficult moments. Finally, I'm going to ask you this. How can people learn more about the healing narrative and the important work you're doing to serve churches, ministry leaders, and individuals?
Yeah, my website is thehealingnarrative.org. You can email me at thehealingnarrativecoach@gmail.com.
All right. Repeat that one more time, Vicki, so they can make sure they get it.
Yep, thehealingnarrative.org. Or you can email me at thehealingnarrativecoach@gmail.com.
All right. All right. Just hang out with me for a second while I close. Preparedness doesn't end when the crisis is over. One of the greatest ministries a church can offer is helping people heal, recover, and move forward together. That's what faithful leadership looks like. Vicki, I want to thank you for being our guest on the podcast, sharing your insights. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Right. And I also want to thank you, the viewers. If you find the information on this podcast to be insightful, please like, share, and subscribe. Until the next episode, remember to be watchful, prayerful, and prepared. God bless.